Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Allahumma taqabbal minna innaka anta as-sami'ul alim wa tub alayna innaka anta at-tawwabur rahim. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. It is very nice to meet you all, and it is a blessing for me to be here to begin this class, inshallah. So let's get right into it. We're going to be talking about mantiq, right? And I'm going to give you all a little bit of a overview. The way this class is going to work is there's a lot of introductory material in mantiq, and there's also a lot of brand new concepts. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to directly jump into spending the entire day giving you an introduction of the science and the founders and all that. We're going to spend the first 15 minutes or so of class every day talking about an introductory session, basically. Like, what are the principles of mantiq that we need to know, some historical information, and inshallah, we'll go from there. So we started a little bit late, but I'll inshallah give you all a starting point of talking about mantiq, and then we'll move around. So we're going to start with the book. To give you all an idea, well, let's try our best to come to class on time because we don't have much time, and I don't want to take more than the hour that we have. So let's go ahead and turn to page 1. This is page 1? No, this is page, I don't know what page this is actually. It's page 7 in the translator's preface. So we're gonna go piece by piece. We have 15 lessons, right? That's where we're at. So we're gonna have 15 lessons. So I would like to spend each lesson, like I want to get through one page. So if you actually go down here to where the actual matan starts, like this is one page right here. So my goal is to get through one of these each week, inshallah. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go through this relatively briefly. We'll talk about a brief introduction of logic. Number 1, what is logic? Well, the word that we're going to look at for logic is known as mantiq, right? Mantiq, that's what it's called. And what this is in reference to is a concept. And this concept is rooted in a Arabic root word, which is noon, ta, and qaf. All right, I'll write that here. So in Arabic, it's noon, ta, qaf. But in English, it's just switched around here. Which means what? It means to speak. That's the literal meaning of it. So the field of logic presupposes, it assumes that you know how to speak and articulate yourself clearly. And if you live in any part of the world right now, you look at social media, you know that people tend to not know how to formulate their ideas clearly. And this is very, very, very important. If you are going to make a claim, you need to know exactly what it is that you're saying. That's very important, right? That's very important for us to understand. How do you think? Because if you're going to say something, you have to think about it clearly first. Okay? So if we were to ascribe a definition to mantiq, what I would do is say the following. I would ascribe this definition. It is the science by which one protects their mind, right, or their minds from making logical errors. In Arabic, if you want to know, it would be ilmun, ilmun yu'sam al-aql an al-khata. Okay, an al-khata. That's what we're looking at. Ilmun asama ya'sim al-aql or yu'sam al-aql an al-khata. Probably ism being the fa'il would be better. Ilmun ya'sim al-aqla an al-khata. Okay, so that's going to be the main working definition. If you don't know Arabic, I'd say follow along with the English. I'm going to try my best to look at both things side by side. But now coming back to the book, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at how do you make a sound argument, right? So number one, we said that it comes from the idea of speaking or thinking. Number two, it protects your mind from making errors. And then there's number three. It teaches you how to articulate yourself, how to think and speak in an articulated manner. Okay. Now there are two places, and again, like I'm not going to do this as a traditional text where we're going to go through every word. The Arabic, we're going to go through every word, but I want you all to have a conception of how the science is set up in regards to, having a holistic understanding. I think a lot of us who are in Dars and Nizami systems, who are studying, tend to, and it's not your teacher's fault, it's just that teachers are trained in a certain manner, and that's the only thing that they can provide. But I want to give you all somewhat of a historical background, number one, and number two, you also need to have like a tartib of this science set up in your mind so that you can tackle it in the different areas of study that you have. So where is ilmul kalam, right? Where, or rather, is logic relevant in the Islamic tradition? Well, number one is ilm al-kalam, right? AKA aqidah, right? Ilm al-kalam, actually, aqidah. Number two is what? Usul al-fiqh. If any of you have done like Usul al-Shashi or Nurul Anwar or any of those other books, or if you've even done Hidayah, there's a lot of concepts. I remember when I was doing Hidayah, people don't talk about these concepts. They just like, graze over them. There's so many aspects of mantiq that are present within our books of fiqh that were not spoken about as well. But these are the two areas, and it says it right here. We're going to talk about kalam and usul al-fiqh. And then Dr. Faryal also is somebody who is a mentor of mine. She is a scholar that did her PhD at the University of Chicago, and she has probably written the clearest sharh of isagoge in English that I have yet to find. I haven't seen anything else that's as intelligible as this one. It'll really help you understand this book in a holistic manner. So she says here that many of the arguments for the existence of God, theodicy, which is the idea of how can a good God do bad things, right? We're gonna, in Ilm al-Kalam, there's a concept, right? Can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can only do that which is considered best amongst our eyes, meaning that, like, oh, why is it that a child died, right? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his reasons. So theodicy discusses that. But God, theodicy, and discussions regarding divine attributes, which would be unintelligible without a basic ability to think clearly. So that's what we're going to learn. We're going to learn about what does a basic ability to think clearly do. And then the format of Islamic legal methodology relies heavily on the reasoning skills and methods established in the study of logic. So I highly recommend reading the introduction. It's very straightforward. You don't need a teacher to really understand this, but it's a very nice introduction to take a look at. All right. There's one more thing that I wanted to share with you all, and then we'll get started on the text. Right? I wanted to give you all somewhat of an idea of logic in the Islamic tradition. All right. So logic in the Islamic tradition can be divided between two periods. The older logicians, mutaqaddimin, and the newer logicians, mutaakhirin. What period are the older logicians from? Basically from the 9th to the 11th century. That's where they're basically from. The 9th to the 11th century. The 9th century is when? around the year 1000. The 10th century is when? From the 1100s onwards. And the schools begin with two individuals that many of you may or may not be familiar with. Number one is Abu Nasr al-Farabi. Al-Farab is in Afghanistan, okay? And the second is Ibn Sina, who is from modern-day Uzbekistan. So to give you all a spatial understanding of this, all right, can you all see this map? Just by a raise of hands, if you can see the map, you can raise your hand. Good. So I'm gonna talk about Farabi, right? Who I said was born in Faryab in Afghanistan. So Afghanistan is here, modern day Afghanistan. So if I were to type in Faryab, Afghanistan, this is where it is. You see, it's bordering what is considered modern day Turkmenistan. So all of this was considered Persia. So that's where Farabi was from. Then you have Ibn Sina, right, or Avicenna, who is from Afshana in Uzbekistan. So if I zoom out here, you see this is where a lot of mantiq was developed. It's not too far off. It's very close. So if I go back here, go back to this chart that we were at, you understand these are the two people. So Farabi, even though he was born in Afghanistan, his form of mantiq is what was actually formed in Baghdad. Because during this time period also, the Baytul Hikmah movement was starting. Many texts were being translated from Greek into Arabic. So a lot of these ideas of logic were being brought into discussion with the Islamic tradition. Then with Ibn Sina, he went to Central Asia and Persia. And again, Baghdad is still connected to Persia, but these are two different schools, you could say. One was building off of the other one. You have Ibn Sina, who's Avicenna. And then basically this stayed developing over years. Then you have the 12th century, right? I just spoke about the 10th and 11th. In the 12th century and the 13th century, you have it divided into Central Asia and Persia and Al-Andalus, Muslim Spain. So the most famous of these people is, for example, Al-Ghazali, Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali, who was born in modern-day Uzbekistan, and he didn't die in Hamdan, actually. I think he died in Tus. No, I think he died in Tus. He's buried in Tus. So maybe he have died there. So this is in the year 1111. Many of you are familiar with Ghazali. Ghazali is amazing. I love Ghazali. Ghazali said that mantiq is one of the most important sciences so that you can find your way to get to the haqq. Okay, so that's something important to understand. And then you have Fakhruddin al-Razi. Fakhruddin al-Razi is very, very important because of the fact that he was someone that the way mantiq is received today amongst us, it was codified. It was codified from what Al-Ghazali, Farabi, and Ibn Sina had worked on. So what we have in front of us mainly has been filtered through the works of Al-Razi. And then you have Ibn Rushd. Ibn Rushd is someone that was from Spain. He had also done some work as well, but mainly Fakhruddin al-Razi's work was basically the bunyad, or it was the foundation for many works of tafsir. If you actually read his tafsir work, he talks a lot about mantiq. And then if we go down over here, we have the newer logicians, the mutaakhirin, right? Or we're still talking about the mutaakhirin. But these are much later people. I think this should have been mutaqaddimin. I think I messed that up. But you have the Ottomans who, for 400 years, taught, preached, and understood logic very well. And then you have the 19th to the 20th century, where colonial rule begins in the Muslim world. Look at this. This is only a 100-year period. And here it's a 400-year period. The Ottomans had like a huge empire, right? So if you were to ever take a look at the Ottomans, I'm going to zoom out here. I want you to have a good understanding of this. The Ottomans, their empire stretched from what is like modern day, like it made its way all the way up to here. All of this was like towards Vienna. This was all Ottoman. This was all Ottoman. Everything from Algeria to Alexandria to Cairo was Ottoman. For a period down to Sudan and Somalia was Ottoman. The Hijaz was Ottoman. All of this up to this point was Ottoman, basically, up to like here. But even then, you have the Safavid Empire and the Persians and the Ithna Ashariya, the Shias. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, they don't know this, but Shia students and scholars are very proficient in mantiq. They really are proficient in mantiq because keep this in mind, in modern day Iran is where Ghazali and other people came from. Even though we have our differences in our creed and our fiqh and our understanding of Islamic history with the Ithna Ashariya and with the Shias, they are very proficient in mantiq. And later, that same tradition made its way into India, Pakistan, and modern day Afghanistan. Because keep in mind that, yes, you had the Shias that were there. You also came from Central Asia that made their way also to India. And believe it or not, many people don't know this, but mantiq was a part and parcel science of Indian madaris only until this time period, which is the 19th to the 20th century, because Muslims are trying to survive, and mantiq was not the science used to survive by that point. And then you have the 21st century, which I call the resurgence of mantiq and ilmul kalam. So in this day and age, if you want to know who's doing work on mantiq and ilmul kalam, these are some names that I have put down. Some of them I mentioned in my bio. I've had the chance to study with Sheikh Nader Shamsuddin Abu Umar, who is a scholar from Syria. He's a no-nonsense scholar that teaches ilm al-kalam very well. There is Khalid al-Ruwayhib, who I've mentioned previously. He's a non-Muslim academic. He's a Lebanese Christian that very much so respects the Muslim tradition. He's at Harvard University. Abdul Hamid Turkmani, who also teaches in Istanbul. He is of Iranian Turkmen origin that studied in Karachi, at Darul Uloom Karachi, who now teaches in Istanbul. Hamza al-Bakri, Dr. Hamza al-Bakri, many of you may be familiar with him. You can find a lot of his clips on YouTube. He's a student of Saeed Fawda, who is also would be considered on this list, but I'm just giving you a short synopsis of who's doing what. You have Asad Ahmad, who's a Muslim Pakistani academic at the University of California, Berkeley, in America, who has been working on ilmul kalam and its resurgence in the South Asian world, specifically in India and Pakistan, looking at the 1600s and onwards. And you have Dr. Ali Al-Abhari, who also teaches ilmul kalam in Istanbul these days. So that's the synopsis I wanted to give you all before we jump into the text. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns before we do it? How's everyone doing? Everyone okay? Everyone with me? I want this to be interactive as well. I want you to ask questions. If you can keep your camera on, keep your camera on. I don't want to feel like I'm talking to a wall. So inshallah, let's go ahead then and jump into it. All right. Bismillah. So let's go now to page. So I'm going to read the Arabic, then I'll get into the English. We'll go to page 3. Okay. Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وصلى اللهم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. قال المؤلف رحمه الله ونفعنا به وإياكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. المنطق لأثير الدين المفضل ابن عمر الأبهري. قال الشيخ الإمام العلامة أفضل المتأخرين قدوة الحكماء الراسخين أثير الدين الأبهري طيب الله ثراه وجعل الجنة مثواه. نحمد الله تعالى على توفيقه ونسأله هداية طريقه ونصلي على محمد وإعترته. So I think عترته but عترته عترته أجمعين. أما بعد فهذه رسالة في المنطق أوردنا فيها ما يجب استحضارها لمن يبتدئ في شيء من العلوم مستعينا بالله إنه مفيد الخير والجود I think so as well. بسم الله. So the logic of Athiruddin al-Abhari is what we're looking at. I think it needs to be allowed to turn on your cameras. That's weird. Okay, I'll take a look at it for next time. But can you are you able to unmute your mics or no?
Someone can, yes,
Okay.
I think we can do the mics. It just seems like the video, it says something about unable to start video because the host has stopped it. So
Yeah, I'm trying to see how I could do that. I don't know if I can. Who can start a collaboration? Video settings. Let's see. Um, yeah, I think it's gonna have to be from when they created this thing, but it's fine. Okay, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. So the Sheikh, the erudite Imam, best of the post-classical scholars, they said mutaakhirin, right? So post-classical is a term, it's a historical term. So just keep that in mind. It refers to, I believe, the 1400s onwards. The post-classical scholars, model for the rooted philosophers, Athiruddin Al-Abhari. We'll talk about him next week. May God make his resting place pleasant and make paradise his final abode. Said, we thank God the exalted for granting success. Ask him for guidance on his path, and we send prayers upon Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the eternity of his kin. To proceed, this is a treatise in logic. We have conveyed in it what must be understood in order to begin studying any part of the sciences, while depending on God, as he is the most generous source of goodness and abundance. And I want to add something here. Is there something that Imam Ghazali said? He said that that whosoever, and I'll write it here, whosoever does not know logic, in Arabic he said, لا ثقة بعلمه, that there is no confidence in his logic, or in his knowledge rather. So knowing how to think is really important. Like if you go on these, like, you sometimes look at Muslim Twitter and you got to ask yourself, like, what on God's green earth are people talking about? Because there's no sense of understanding what truth is, how to discern an argument, say it's strong, say it's weak. So that's important for us to understand. How do we go about doing this? How do we go about understanding logic and how to think? All right. And now let's go ahead and we read this. Now we're going to begin the actual lesson on mantiq. Does anyone here want to read actually? You can raise your hand and I'll pick you, inshallah. Humair, thank you. Yeah, I think it is Jude, as you mentioned. Yeah, bil khayr wal Jawd. I'm like, I don't think it's Jawd. It's supposed to be Jude. All right, Muhsin, go ahead, man. You can go ahead and read. And remind me, where are you based?
I'm based out of Yemen, but I'm currently in Cairo.
Okay. And are you are like, did you grow up in the West, or are you from like Yemen actually, or from Cairo?
I grew up in the U.S. in Michigan.
Okay, where?
Detroit.
Detroit. Okay. Cool, cool. Inshallah, go ahead. You can start us off.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال المؤلف رضي الله عنه وعنكم نفعنا به وبكم. المنطق لأثير الدين المفضل بن عمر الأبهري. قال الشيخ الإمام العلامة. Oh, we read this part.
Yeah, we read that. So go to page 5. So we're going to read from here.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. isagoge. اللفظ الدال بالوضع يدل على تمام ما وضع له بالمطابقة وعلى جزئه بالتضمن إن كان له جزء، وعلى جزئه بالتضمن إن كان له جزء، وعلى ما يلازمه في الذهن بالالتزام. كان الإنسان فإنه يدل على الحيوان الناطق بالمطابقة، وعلى أحدهما بالتضمن، وعلى قابل العلم وصنعة الكتابة بالالتزام.
All right, we'll stop there. Jazakallah khairan. So there's a couple of terms that have been mentioned here that I want to bring our focus into. Mantiq is a science, friends, about terms. So you want to understand, like, each science has istilahat, right? And we all know this. Each science has istilahat. So I don't want to get caught up in number one, because there's two things happen. Number one, certain terms have specific meanings, right? So if you're studying, for example, ulumul Quran, and the word najman comes up, right? That doesn't mean star, that means like in a piecemeal manner. So similarly, you have the word laft, we're going to talk about that. You have the word wada, right? Wada also comes in usul al-fiqh. Wada also comes in, wada is actually a science in and of itself. You have the word mutabaqa, you have the word tadammun, you have the word mulazama or yulazim, right? So we're going to talk about some of these words and we'll make somewhat of a chart. So this section is going to be about what we call indication, okay? And I'm going to go to the English section and we'll go one by one, okay? Indication. Meaning what? How do we pair words and definitions? And I want to bring something else into conversation here. We live in a very funky time, right? Where people don't know what truth is. There is a lot of what we would call sophistry, sufista'iyah. There is a lot of claims to saying that we cannot determine what absolute truth is. We have no idea what it is. Mantiq will allow you to establish what is truth without simply saying that, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that the deen is the truth, therefore the deen is the truth. If you say that, is that a true statement? Yes, it is, right? Nobody's arguing that. But if you say to somebody that does not have a tasawwur of what, number one, Allah is, does not have a tasawwur, does not have an idea of who God is, or of what the Quran is, and you present this argument, it would actually be logically circular. It doesn't make any sense. So now what we're going to do is talk about indication. This section is going to be about what we would call dalala, okay? Ad-dalala, which is called what? Indication. Now I'm going to go to the English. Oh, I think I was up here. Sorry. Utterances that signify meanings by designating meaning to each articulated sound, bil wada' can denote these meanings for which they have been posited. So we're going to talk about each one of these, okay? The first word is lafz. Lafz is a word, okay? For those of you that have studied Nahu, the first conversation about Nahu, for example, if you've studied Al-Ajrumiyya, right? Or if you want to say it in the proper way, Al-Ajrumiyya. So with Ajrumiyya, the first section of it is what? Al-laf huwa murakkabun, right? Huwa mufradun murakkabun bil wada' wa aqsamuhu thalatha. So we're going to talk about al-laf. Wada is mentioned there as well, but we're going to talk about words. So if we're talking about mantiq, I said that mantiq is what? Mantiq is you making sure that your arguments are protected from error. Now, if I were to take something and I break it down to its smallest piece, if I were to say you have an argument, your argument is made up of a preposition. That preposition is made up of a subject and a predicate. That subject is made up of a word, right? And that word is made up of letters. So letters don't make any meaning like by themselves. For example, if I say, do we have the word lafz, right? So if I just say lam, does lam mean anything? No. Does mim mean anything? No. Does dha mean anything? No. But if I bring these together and I say al-lafz, you know that I'm referring to a word. You have what we call in Arabic tasawwur, okay? This is tasawwur. You have a concept. It's a singular idea. So in Arabic, for example, if I say, forget Arabic actually, if I say car, you have a perception of something in your mind. So tasawwur is in reference to a perception. This is the first building block, and inshallah we'll make charts from all of this. But you have perception. which is called tasawwur. So al-lafz ad-dal bil-wada', right? So here, if you were to look at the English, right, what's he saying? He's saying, and I would say have the book open in front of you, separate from this PDF, because it'd just be easier to follow along. Wada is the science of designation, right? Designation. Yadullu ala, it points to yadullu ala. Well, the first thing here is tamam, and the second thing here is juz, okay? So dalala, right? Indication. What does a word, a designated word, point to? Either the complete meaning of something or a partial meaning of something, okay? And this is where I want to kind of stop for a second